Morning, everybody. Thank you for taking the time out, to join me for the annual State of the College address. As I think I probably say each year, I do think that this is a unique opportunity to share more fully with the college community what's been going on at the college, how we're doing, certainly against our goals and our priorities as an institution. But it's also, I think, a way to get everybody to think a little bit more broadly beyond simply what they do each day and appreciate what other members of the community contribute to the overall mission of the institution. Now, this year, I want to focus a bit on certainly the issue of planning and being clear within our vision. And certainly some of that, I think, is because we are in a transition phase between an old strategic plan and a new strategic plan. But certainly when we talk about the state of the college, there are certainly many things. Some are big, some are smaller, but many contribute to the well-being of the institution and the feeling of a sense of community. And certainly we've got a lot of our regular numbers and certainly key metrics. And quite honestly, if you look at the bigger metrics, the kinds of things that particularly SUNY System might pay attention to, it becomes very easy to say that we are a strong institution. I mean, certainly in our strategic planning process, we did an enrollment management evaluation, strategized, moved it up to the 100. Certainly the student affairs and admissions area knows us better than most. The admissions committee knows us better than most. But we've achieved our goal. We basically have expanded our enrollment from the 75 per class up to 100 per class, and now kind of are going into more of a stabilization process. Certainly one of the big issues around the state is issues of completion and degrees and granting of certificates and other micro-credentials. And it may not seem that it affects us that much, but in fact, the state does pay attention to how we do. It's not just how many we bring into the institutions, but how many we graduate and go out to successfully practice in our economy. And certainly you can see that as a reflection of the increased enrollment, we also have an increased number of degrees being granted, and we're meeting our goals. I would certainly highlight actually the red box, which this year is PhDs granted, really for the past, looking for this coming May to the May before, 7, and actually quite historically, if you go down, you can see that there used to be years where we granted no PhDs or awarded any PhDs at all. And so that program is showing a real vitality. A new outcome measure, which is the Accreditation Council on Optometric Education. That red line represents a red line. That in fact, if you do not have more than 80% of your matriculating students graduate and become licensed within 6 years, you will be basically under evaluation and your accreditation will be at risk. And so when you take a look at our institution, percent graduating, right now we're consistently up in the mid-90s. That includes people who may leave for financial reasons because they're not interested or they didn't think perhaps that it was the right profession for them. And you can see that certainly most graduate in 4 years, but certainly in a number of years we had some that took 5 years or certainly more than 4 years to do it. You have good years, you have bad years, or what we consider to be bad years, not bad for the ACOE, but bad for us. The entering class of 2007, which graduated in 2011, only 88% of those matriculating actually graduated. So these things fluctuate, but we're an incredibly strong performer overall. Financially, we're in very good shape. Now, certainly, many of you who may have been here for more than 5 years do remember when the financial crisis hit and the state started withdrawing funds, or we ended up having to pay back the state funds. You can see where our expenses certainly exceeded our revenues, and we had to use reserve funds and take actions in order to work it out. But we've been in a positive position for the last 5 years, and we project going into a positive position for the foreseeable future. And certainly from a facility and construction standpoint, an investment in our capital, we've done very, very well. And as you'll hear later on, we're still doing very well, and some very exciting projects are going to be starting during this year. And certainly our exit strategies of students are very positive. These were areas of concern from campus relaxation areas, non-academic activities, career planning. But the one on the upper left-hand corner, which is really satisfaction with the education, this last year for the graduating class of 2017, 98% of the students expressed satisfaction or being very satisfied with the education that they received here. It's sort of hard to argue with that kind of impression. The challenge is not to let it go down. And so if you look at some of those big, broad areas, we're a very strong institution. We're a very successful institution. We can always be better. But the reason that we're a strong institution is, in fact, because of good strategic planning, good use of data in our decision making. Well, I passed out, and I don't know if everybody has it or not, but you have actually a physical copy of our last strategic plan, 2013 to 2018. How many of you actually remember seeing this? Okay. A few strong affirmatives, a few, I think I saw it. One of the things we've learned from planning for the next strategic plan is we probably have to do a better job of communicating our strategic plan. But I would actually, everybody who was here 5 years ago got a copy of this and got a copy of it, I think, mailed to them at home. And so I would certainly encourage you to look through it. You will find things that you've actually been a part of, and I think you'll find that most of this we've been very successful in achieving our goals. But that process of planning and that process of being disciplined in how we set our goals and how we choose to excel as an institution is a result of a good, thoughtful, reflective process. And so certainly we actually started our strategic planning process for 2018 to 2023. That sounds like a long time away, but 2018 to 2023, we actually started it really last spring going into the summer. And the Institutional Research and Planning Committee, and Dr. Schwartz chairs it and sort of guides the process, began the process particularly over the summer. And to date, actually, the committee has certainly completed or looked at, or nearly completed, certainly a review of our values, our mission statement, vision statements, done an environmental scan of what's occurring in the world as well as at the institution, and doing a SWOT analysis, or looking at our strengths, our weaknesses, our opportunities, and threats. And at this point, we're really beginning to work on defining our goals and our objectives for the next 5 years. That process is accelerating. Certainly the faculty are having a retreat early next month. This is going to be a significant part of that retreat, so it's going to be a very important meeting to be a part of. But then we also going to expand certainly to the entire community. Now, some of you actually may have participated in this already and not even known it. Over the past summer, for the first part of this, we had 2 committees. I hope that if you're on this list and were a member of these committees, you remember. But we had a committee led by Amber Hopkins Jenkins and Jennifer Kelly Campbell looking at our mission and our values as an institution. And Dr. Guy Albieri led the committee looking at the environmental scan and doing the SWOT analysis. Surveys went out. We actually had a pretty good participation in that survey. And a lot of that information has really kind of gone into the dialogue and discussion as we look to the future. Now, what I want to do for part of the meeting, part of the address, is really take a quick look back, not focus simply on the last year, which is what I often do, but look back over the last 5 years to try to get everybody to appreciate, in fact, how much progress we've made. And we made that progress really because of your work, your energy, and your commitments. The first couple of goals that are in the strategic plan that you have are really focused on the Doctor of Optometry degree. Deliver a customizable professional degree program that ensures active integrated learning while preparing students for problem-oriented patient care, and to deliver competency-based clinical training that is founded upon evidence-based practice and anticipates future practice plans. And when you look at what the academic area has done, and this is probably a partial list, over the last several years, what you really see is a pretty impressive array of curricular review and change, the embrace of interprofessional education, collaborative practice, certainly bringing in more work with nursing and social work, among others, and there may be more in the future. But certainly providing value-added programs, whether it was the MBA certificate, the advanced standing program, the new residency graduate degree program, not to mention all of the technologies in providing greater support and advising services, certainly to our students. It's been an incredibly busy 5 years. And certainly, this is usually the classic slide looking at how our students do using national boards, and those are certainly changing in terms of the way they're measuring it. But consistently, our students do certainly above the national average. Occasionally, you have little drops and dips here and there, but if you look at the upper right-hand corner, that's Part 3, first-time takers. Last year, everybody was a bit concerned because we dipped. We weren't that far above the national average on that particular test. This year, we're back up at 96%. The students that just took it in December had an overall pass rate of 96%. A very good and very strong performance. So you got to take it with a bit of a grain of salt. This becomes more critical, which is really the ultimate pass rate, and that is and they're measuring this differently now, and that's why the national average went up. They're saying, what percentage of graduating students who have taken all 3 parts of the national board have passed all 3 parts? And so we're just about 97%, which means that there's probably 2 to 3 students who still had to pass 1 part. The group that got excluded are some of the international students now, the Canadian students who may not take all 3 parts. And so they don't get put into this metric, but this is important for our accreditation as well. And certainly, again, this accrediting standard, which I already showed you, which is looking at percentage of students who matriculate that successfully complete the program, whether it's in 4 years or 5 years. But when we kind of look at some of the trends, and this has come out of some of the planning so far, what we really do see certainly is really a shift, and it's been talked about among our faculty. We certainly recognize it, and it's really pushing for some changes and continuing changes or evolving changes in our curriculum in terms of really thinking more about the clinical reasoning versus the data collection and the way the students think and analyze. But we are now seeing a big push towards subspecialization within the profession, which has an impact certainly on this and others. Looking at micro-credentials, badges, a very common terminology in higher education, and we may look at it, but it gets down to that customizable education that we've spoken about in the past, and I'm sure will continue to be a part of it. And the other is really being able to respond to change very rapidly, not something that institutions of higher education always do gracefully. And of course, the disruptions of new technologies at all levels of our programs. And certainly our residency programs have some of the same pressures. What you see certainly here is that about 40% of our students are now consistently going into residencies nationwide. National average is still about 25%, and so our students are certainly choosing to go in that direction quite aggressively. And we certainly met our goal in terms of expanding our residency opportunities over the past several years. So we're up to, I think, 41 and maybe 42 residents at this point. But residencies are also facing the same challenge. Subspecialization is going to require residencies to become much more defined in terms of what are the advanced competencies, what are students going to learn, what are they going to be able to do at the end of that residency. And they're going to have to be validated. We can certainly take a leadership role in doing that and leading the country in that evolution of residencies, but it does mean that we will probably be challenging ACOE or accreditation standards to some degree, or putting in for substantive changes in those programs much more frequently. In the research realm, pretty much when we started this plan, we didn't really have a clinical vision research center. It was conceptualized. We knew we wanted to go in that way, in that direction, but it didn't yet exist. And so we had a couple of goals related to research. Certainly, it was looking at increasing our intellectual impact, but new areas of research, and certainly the clinical research realm was one of those, but also strengthening our training programs. And certainly, and this is more the past year in terms of a couple of highlights, We've sort of been somewhat stable, in our financing, but it's been during a period of time of a lot less reliability of outside funding sources. And so as the federal government has become more challenging, we've made the successful switch to looking much more at industry and other sources moving forward. But these are some of the achievements, one of which, and I think we're in negotiation, but Dr. Bloomfield put in a grant that got recognized by the state to provide $750,000 to help with startup funding for a new researcher focusing on translational research. And certainly over the last several years, you've got a lot of achievements, I think, within the research realm. Certainly the Clinical Vision Research Center certainly stands out, but it's also the ongoing success of our faculty overall. Again, redesign of educational programs, as well as the creation of the MS residency or the PhD residency program. And certainly, I know it's actually one of Dr. Bloomfield's favorite is the accreditation by AHARP of our human subjects research protocol. It only took 3 years, something like that. The PhD program has certainly become more competitive over time. We're getting a very, very high quality, and as I pointed out before, if you go back 10 years or more, there were a lot of students that started PhD programs that never finished. Our students are finishing. We're not really seeing the attrition of our PhD students leaving the program while in process. The MSOD program has challenges, but actually so does the OD MBA option. Our Doctor of Optometry curriculum is becoming in some ways so packed, so challenging, that when we provide value-added opportunities, students are a little gun-shy in terms of moving in that direction. But certainly, there are also trends that we have to anticipate as we plan for the future in the research realm. Certainly, we have been quite successful, but again, there is uncertainty in terms of future support. Certainly translational research and potentially, hopefully, a new hire of a faculty member, we're beginning to ramp up. Certainly, the research community has been working heavily on beginning to develop a translational research center, which then takes us from A to Z in terms of basic translational and clinical research. And certainly, just again, a note for the CVRC, it seems that, at this point, they're being extremely successful in terms of completing the studies, doing it on a timely basis, and getting the subjects. And that can't happen without the support of the entire community and the entire clinical faculty as well. Patient care and community outreach. Just as in the academic realm, and again, this is a partial, in some ways, these are partial lists. The healthcare environment is particularly challenging. Between all of the changes in terms of the healthcare delivery system, the insurance system, the incorporation of new technologies, the need to really shift to the patient experience and the excellence of that experience really requires multiple avenues to move forward. And so certainly faculty, staff have certainly been extremely busy in terms of dealing with new technologies, everything from, of course, electronic health record systems to patient portals, trying to incorporate more collaborative care. The Stony Brook social work program has been particularly helpful in some of that. And certainly taking a look and saying, what is the future of eye care delivery and what even does a clinic look like? And we will get into that a bit more later. But we've also been expanding our footprint externally as well. Now, in terms of the University Eye Center, certainly one of the goals was to begin to increase patient access. And we went through, I think, a period of some challenge, a fair amount of flatness, I think, in terms of our patient census. But over the last year and a half, we've actually seen that patient census beginning to go up. And so last year, I think it was about 4.5% increase in terms of patient census. This year, we're sort of on the same pattern as well. The referral center just has always continued to grow. It certainly has always been something that gets highlighted in these discussions in terms of its success and the degree to which external providers, not just optometrists, but ophthalmologists, pediatricians, school systems are referring into the University Eye Center, and it speaks strongly to the reputation that we're developing. Soon, not yet, but I guess soon, we will have a new website for the UEC to also sort of check off as a recent accomplishment. And our public service has expanded tremendously. Some of this has been successful grants, helping to support the hiring of outreach coordinators. But what you really see here is that whether it's homebound visits, vision screenings, community lectures, events, we're doing more than we've ever done before. In 2000, I did put up here not just the events, but 2017 events benefited or were attended or participated in by 3,660 participants. In screenings, we screened over 3,500 individuals out in the community. Our footprint has been pretty strong. You know, we have contracts. We're providing care and working together with a number of agencies within the New York metropolitan area. What you really have here is sort of the foundation of last year. This year, actually, Gouverneur, which only started about a year ago, we've expanded from 1 optometrist to 3 optometrists in our partnership. That will provide additional educational opportunities. Discussions are well underway to have a similar relationship with Vanderbilt Health Center, a new health center in Staten Island. When that happens, we will have we will be on the ground in all 5 boroughs of New York City. The Community Healthcare Network, Dr. Soden has been working with them for some time, but the Vision Van is being built. And that van is actually going to cycle around 12 different community health centers across 4 of the boroughs providing care. They'll be hiring the clinician, but who will be certainly associated with us, but we'll be providing students to help in delivering that care. So when you kind of look at our footprint in the New York metropolitan area, we really have a very big presence throughout the city, and it certainly creates tremendous opportunities going forward. But we have challenges, and we have a lot of trends that we see coming down the pike. Certainly just the organizational structure for the delivery system, but there are uncertainties and complexities, particularly what's going on in Washington. Disruptive eye care, certainly everything from telehealth to new technologies, are really changing and transforming the way in which eye care is delivered and the way in which we need to train our students. Certainly consumerism, the patient experience, ease of access is also a huge variable that we have to address. Now, the 2013 to 2018 strategic plan also did look at our community and trying to look at ways to vitalize, engage, activate. And I think we've been successful in many ways, but we also have challenges. By and large, you know, when you think about the things we do, certainly with our students, Career Development Center has been a tremendous success. Certainly there's more than enough for our students to engage in throughout the 4 years that they're on our campus. Faculty Development Program is getting very much reinvigorated over the past couple of years. You see more and more colloquia, I think more participation of faculty, you know, in terms of engaging with each other, both intellectually as well as professionally. Clinical workshops, our recognition committee has certainly continued to put together a strong effort. SUNY Eye Network, Jennifer Kelly Campbell has been sort of leading that with our alumni, but it's also affecting our student working with Dr. Quy Nguyen of the Career Development Center, creating a virtual platform for alumni and student engagement, and that's going extremely well. And certainly we did the Campus Climate Survey, which is also giving us a lot of input into the future, along with some of the responses that you folks have made in the surveys. Student success, you know, we have to be a little careful not to take our students for granted. They are very strong, but what I would tell you is that the applicant pool across the country is flat, and there are more programs. And so the competitiveness for optometry students is growing, and there are some schools that are actually at this point very weak in terms of things like board performance and potentially at risk. We continue to have a high yield. We were competing with one other school for a while in terms of overall highest admissions test scores. That school stopped reporting their score two cycles ago, or a cycle ago. So I'm very happy to make the assumption that we have the best entrance test scores in the country. And certainly we're in the top tier from a grade point average standpoint as well. We know, we recognize, and it's certainly part of our efforts from a system standpoint as well, is to do better from an underrepresented minority perspective. Our goal in our performance improvement plan with system administration was basically to be able to have a diversity level that was similar to medical schools, and they're at around 14%. We have gone up. The C-STEP program, I think, has been quite successful, particularly in some of its new iterations and achievements, you know, at sort of improving our ability to attract and to matriculate well-qualified minority students. Certainly a kudo, Dr. Albieri and his staff put in 3 small grants through the Performance Improvement Fund process, got $120,000 to complement the C-STEP grant in trying to improve our outreach and performance in that area. One of the biggest challenges is going to be affordability. You can see it's interesting because for a while when the state had frozen tuition, we became probably one of the best deals in the country. And then they unfroze tuition, and all of the health programs across system had to start moving up their tuition levels. And so part of our good financial position right now is that now we're basically competitive with other public universities in the system. That challenges our ability to recruit and matriculate well-qualified students. We're still way, way below the private independent sector. But what it means is that probably for the foreseeable future, we're going to be looking at 3% or 2% tuition increases. For a few years, we had almost 10% tuition increases. And so we've got to be very careful as an institution about not becoming too reliant upon our students, you know, for funding. And certainly the indebtedness is of extreme concern. If you look over here, last year, we had a student graduate with $290,000 plus in debt. So they're starting their careers certainly quite high. And interestingly, a significant part had no debt. You know, and so we're sort of seeing some very strange and interesting things in terms of the way in which they're financing their education. But quite honestly, if we have a great student body, it certainly makes everybody's lives a whole lot easier, and affordability is one of those key variables to make sure we continue to excel. So, you know, what are some of the challenges? Okay, well, the good news is people come here because of the quality of the experience, the quality of the program. But there is a flat applicant pool. Association of Schools and Colleges is working on a coordinated effort to expand that pool, but that takes time. There have been an increasing number of OD programs, although certainly the profession itself is now speaking out, the American Optometric Association challenging some of that, trying to make sure that the accreditation agency really reviews potential new schools to make sure that they're really truly viable in terms of attracting both faculty and students. You know, and certainly our dependence on the state, although we're doing very well in capital, but from an operations standpoint, we expect that to be flat. Now, goal 11, which is sort of everything else, which is, you know, whether it's advancement, whether it's administration and finance, whether it's maintenance. I mean, there's so much that goes into supporting the programmatic mission of the institution. And so obviously finance is a big part, and I shared that we've been in very good shape, and thanks to David Bowers and Marcel Catafago and the staff, they sort of keep us on the straight and narrow. Marcel does his best to keep things from me, so I don't know how well we're really doing because I might spend the money. But you know, we have been in very good shape. But, again, part of it is, will we continue to be in good shape? And when you look at the percentage or the revenues by source, the one that's really growing is the revenues from our students. And that came because we expanded our enrollment and because we had large tuition increases for several years. That's going to plateau. That's going to stop. And so patient care revenues, research grants, continuing to find other philanthropic sources, getting money from the state through other avenues is going to become more critical as we move forward. And certainly part of the benefit of being strong financially is our reserve funds. And so we are doing very well. And what you really see is that we really have to keep about 25% of our reserve funds sort of on the side in case something bad happens. But as we go above that 25%, we have that money to invest. And we have been investing it in new technologies. We've been investing it, we're now beginning to invest it much more in our physical facilities as well. To some degree, it supported some personnel, but that's a very dangerous and slippery slope because you can't guarantee that it will be there for the long-term future. Institutional advancement. Certainly people are familiar with the pediatric campaign. I want to certainly do a call out to Ann Warwick, our VP for Institutional Advancement. As you all know, she's stepping down from the VP position, taking a little more, not disappearing, but taking more relaxed. And certainly after how many years of? A long time. After a long time. I certainly want to publicly thank her for everything she's done as our Vice President for Institutional Advancement. We are in the middle of a search, and hopefully we'll have that concluded within the next 6 to 8 weeks. But the campaign has also been an opportunity to really take a look at our infrastructure, bringing in new technologies, new approaches to engaging the external community. We're doing better with getting additional money from government. And Dr. Cohen, I don't know if he's here or not, but Dr. Cohen was critical, I think, in terms of linking us in with Representative Simotis. Pam Letterman worked with him in securing $125,000 with her in terms of $125,000 in support directly out of our legislature. We've now learned that we talk about additional monies to all of our representatives and friends in the legislature, and certainly the merger. But let's talk a little bit about the facilities, because certainly this is I've used this before, although I've now added that big arrow on the right, because we've been actually very successful with some of our capital projects. And certainly you've seen this slide before too, but in the last 5 years, really starting here, we've done a number of the research laboratories, certainly all of our teaching facilities, or most of our teaching facilities, some infrastructure. I'll certainly, I don't know if Dr. Schuttenberg is here. Oh, there she is in the back. Dr. Schuttenberg was critical in introducing us to the Hunters, who were the force behind the mural Eyes of the World that came out of the Women's March a year ago. And so that piece of work, is actually a really nice addition to the lobby, and I think it's generated a lot of excitement and discussion, certainly among our students and our broader community. And more recently, phase 1 of the library project. So what's coming? Well, the good news and the bad news is we got $9.2 million to continue the mechanicals project. The good news is that all of these antiquated systems on all of our floors will get replaced with new, more energy efficient systems. The bad news is it's going to disrupt all of our lives at different points in time. But that is beginning in 2018, and pretty much most of our floors, not all, but most of our floors will be affected and temporarily disrupt many of our lives. Perhaps a little, for most people, a little more exciting than, this isn't diminish the importance of critical maintenance, but the things that tend to excite people generally, although having a climate-controlled office that works is usually a benefit. But we've got actually 3 projects going on that are quite exciting. One you've seen the beginning of, which is the library project. That's self-funded. If you remember, we had, when we perform well, we do have money we can reinvest in our institution. That's going to be completed next summer. But we also just recently got complete approval to proceed with the lower lobby level in terms of building a new teaching laboratory complex for our students that's going to include a new preclinical area, new anatomy, biochemistry area, or physiology area, as well as a new virtual reality simulation laboratory as well. And so we'll be congregating many of our teaching laboratories and capabilities really down here on the lower lobby or the mezzanine level with sort of state-of-the-art equipment going forward. And then I'll be talking about this in a little more detail, but the 10th floor, the Center for Pediatric Eye Care, is something I want to go into more in depth on because I think it's a great example of successful planning processes. Now, I did want to take a little bit of an opportunity just to give you a little bit of an update on state budget and finance. And I'm not sure how many of you really follow this, but the executive budget of the governor was actually flat or a little down for SUNY and CUNY. He is pushing forward with the Excelsior program, expanding that now for eligibility up to 110 families with 110,000 in income. It was 100,000 last year, and he's pushing the DREAM Act, which makes the immigrant or the Dreamers eligible for in-state tuition moving forward. Kind of sticking to the hold harmless model of flat funding of all of the operations. We've made that assumption, so it's kind of built into our planning. But he's not pushing for any support for salary increases. And if you've paid attention to the most recent UUP communication, or what I saw, was that it's still got a ways to go, but they're looking at 2% increase per year, but 4% of that is retroactive, and then another 2% would pick in. So April 1st would be 6% increase. Now, 2%, just to let you know what that does system-wide, 2% salary increase will increase the cost to the SUNY system by $70 million. The tuition increases that they've approved for the undergraduate, $200 per year per undergraduate, will raise $28 million. So that basically means the system, the individual campuses, will have to come up with $42 million from other sources in order to just stay even where they are from a financial standpoint. They're actually decreasing community colleges because that's based totally on the enrollment. And so if you have a bad year with enrollment, your state support goes down. If you have a good year, it goes up. Well, last year was a bad year. They saw enrollment decrease, and so actually they're going to get decreased state support moving forward. And then the capital plan, we had gotten previous year $550 million as a system. The governor has projected $350 million. Now clearly, SUNY and hopefully the legislature disagrees with some of these strategies. And so priorities are certainly stabilization, and that includes things like funding negotiated salary increases, at least giving community colleges a flat base of support so it doesn't go down, and certainly looking for that additional support actually looking for some additional support for full-time faculty to plan for transition as some faculty retire and new faculty are hired. I'm not going to go through all of these, but there is a push on, and certainly we're meeting with our legislators to advocate on behalf of the system. But for the final phase of this conversation, what I really want to talk a little bit again is about the importance of planning, because when you get the opportunity to weigh in or offer up suggestions or react to strategic plans that will be circulated and looking for opinions and participation, I want you to think about how important it really is and what it means from our commitment to excellence. Certainly, everybody will remember in the fall of 2016, we got actually $1.837 million or something like that. 1.5 million was to renovate 3,000 square feet of primary care space in the clinic. And it was supposed to be intended really to give us sort of a beta opportunity to think about the broader clinical structure and the delivery of eye care going into the future. The balance was actually to support the new simulation lab that will be built on the mezzanine level. And the Lieutenant Governor, Governor Hochul, was here, and certainly we made the announcement. Now, one of the things we learned is that when you announce you get money from the state, that doesn't mean you get money from the state quite yet. So about now 15 months later, we actually have money from the state. But that certainly gave us the opportunity to begin to plan. And two things sort of drove the decision. It was broadly primary care, but we went at pediatrics for a couple of reasons. One was that the kind of space we were talking about was something that could be self-contained for the pediatric unit. But the other was that by looking at space up on the 10th floor, we would expand our clinical footprint. What that means is that when we vacate some space, that the pediatric unit uses now, it gives us flexibility so that we can begin to close down other areas of the clinic and move our operations around, because one of the goals, I think, is probably to basically renovate and do as much of the clinical facility as quickly as we can over the next few years. And so initially 3,500 square feet was identified. It's the records room. Some of you may be sitting there saying, well, that's where I work. Where am I going? Don't worry, we'll take care of you. And the first phase was just trying to figure out if it fits. And quite simply, certainly working with Dr. Melios, the pediatric faculty, chief of staff, and of course, Lidovina Martinez-Gonzalez. The first question is, can we fit it? And the answer came back, yes, you can fit it. But it also came back that you can fit it using very conventional approaches. And it doesn't necessarily change the way you think about patient care. It looks very much like a standard patient care facility. And they even did a rendering, and of course we needed a rendering. You need something cute to sort of attract people wanting to donate to help support the building out of the clinics. But again, it was fairly conventional, big desk, nice waiting room, examination rooms in the back, sort of closed off areas. It certainly had some interesting elements like chill rooms, for kids who are hypersensitive to stimulation and need a quieter environment. But again, it was actually fairly traditional. And so we started pushing the conversation, and a lot of it really becomes talking about the future and how do you educate and provide patient-centered care. The architects walked away feeling that they first had some principles. It had to be a future-directed design. You wanted to break down segregation of spaces, create flexibility that allows you to change and modify and embrace new directions. And you wanted it to be very much patient-centered. You wanted to bring services and staff to the patient, and everything should be easily accessible. It also really stressed new modes of communication before, during, and after the visit to create a seamless patient care experience. And of course, we wanted a very transparent and light kind of environment. This started getting a little bit more detailed, in terms of program innovation. Again, focusing on the patient and family-centered experience, not just the patient, but the whole family. Increasing care coordination, patient navigation, patient advocacy. This is all part of collaborative practice, team-based care that is so prevalent in the conversation of healthcare today. But we wanted to be multidisciplinary, start to bring in social work, expand or increasingly engage the nursing group. How do we bring vision rehabilitation to some of these patients, not necessarily ship them around the facility as well? And can we think about adding other services for this patient population later, occupational therapy, physical therapy, audiology, et cetera. So certainly a more expansive creative vision, certainly integrated technologies, seamless communication, and again, patient access certainly to educational materials over time. Well, this ended up translating into not 3,500 square feet, but 5,000 square feet. The good thing for architects and construction is whenever you get creative and innovative, it costs more. So more space, more money. But, we did sort of they defined, or, because of the principles, the different areas in terms of the interactive technology, integration of waiting room and optical, less desk. Don't put in big barriers between staff and patients. Create more visual access to examination areas, demystifying care, get that chill room, consultation rooms. But one of the central things here was the concept of a collaboration zone. And what they kind of came up with was a general schematic that what you see in the white is really the public spaces. The blue is what you may think of as patient care spaces or treatment and consultative spaces. And the yellow is actually much more of a team-based, work-based approach to the patient care. Every examination room can be entered from two sides. The students and the teaching staff can see directly into the examining room to observe the student and improve their teaching and learning opportunities. Certainly, the patients and the kids may run around. They may be able to see into those examination rooms so that there's less mystification of what's going on in the room. And then you sort of get a little bit more exciting and you translate it into a three-dimensional construct. And I don't know if we'll be able to afford it or not, but actually what the architects are talking about is in this glass is electrically modifiable glass, so it can become opaque or clear. So depending upon where you are in the examination, the kind of reaction that you get from the kids, it gives you a lot of various flexibility. In the meantime, you can have different types of providers, team-based care, faculty, students, certainly in the back coordinating, discussing cases. Again, so you have your public space, your care space, and then you really have your operational space. Quite intriguing. And then just to make it exciting, you end up with something that actually looks like this. The neon may be toned down a little bit. And certainly everybody will sort of get to weigh in. But what you see here is sort of a waiting area, engaged, a lot more electronic access, opticals, nice friendly people playing with the children, examining lanes down here, and sort of a much more flowing, integrated kind of a space. And so, when you think about the evolution of a plan, this is what we are now. Then we just tried to make things fit, and it looked better, but it kind of behaved the same way. Not a lot of seats, you're right. And then you kind of move into sort of a more innovative, free-flowing kind of a concept, which is going to require work and changes in behaviors. But if we set our goals as an institution, and we focus on excellence of education, excellence of patient care, the creation of new knowledge, because certainly the rooms in the pediatric area, there's a consultation room that can be used for subject recruitment and discussion of research. You end up with a very different kind of delivery system. And it allows us to sort of test out what works and what doesn't work, and that we incorporate it along the way. So when I talk about strategic planning, and when you start to see about knowing what your priorities are and what your goals are, I think it's important to keep in mind, those goals may seem vague at times, they may seem far-reaching, but when you really kind of get into utilizing a good strategic plan in your decision-making, it can become this kind of a presentation and this kind of a delivery service. So I wanted to use that simply as an example of what we're capable of doing. Pretty much every project we do here, every time we change a program, every time we change a space, that same kind of dialogue has to occur. And so I don't know how many of you recognize this particular scene. How many of you have actually seen this? This is okay, good. I was afraid this was just me showing my age. But there was this little quote, that I found from Lucille Ball. Don't know anything about luck. I've never banked on it, and I'm afraid of people who do. Luck to me is something else. Hard work and realizing what's opportunity and what is not, and certainly in the chocolate factory scene of Lucy is a good example of what isn't an opportunity and what doesn't work. And so when we do strategic planning, we really do actually, we're not only making decisions about what we're going to do, we make decisions about what we're not going to do. So I would certainly invite everybody to participate in that process. I know that we're now getting towards, at this point, everybody's stomach should be grumbling. There is lunch outside, and I would invite everybody to sort of join me and enjoy a few minutes. I know some of you will grab some food and carry it off. try not to carry too much for your friends who didn't attend. You know, we don't want to shortchange the people who did attend. But in closing, I really do want to thank my President's Council for all the hard work that they've done over the past year and their commitment to the institution going forward. So thank you very much. I hope this actually has given you a bit of a different perspective. And believe it or not, the last 10 of these are actually on the web. If you actually ever kind of want to look at how the institution is doing, looking at data, the Office of Institutional Research under Dr. Schwartz, all this stuff is posted on our web. There really are no secrets. So anyway, thank you very much for your attention. I appreciate it. And I'll see you at lunch.